Governments deny it. Militaries deny it. Even the mainstream media denies it. But they are here, and they've been here for a very long time. The Mutual UFO Network has been on the front lines uncovering the truth since 1969, and now we're sharing that truth with you. Welcome to MUFON What's Up with your hosts, Katie Page, Christopher DePerno, and Katie Cook, exclusively on the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. Wondering what's up? So are we.
What's up? It is Tuesday night, and you're listening to MUFON What's Up Radio, the show that says discovery starts with curiosity, and curiosity starts with MUFON. Welcome to my new home. I'm getting settled in. I'm up here in the beautiful Rocky Mountains of Colorado, and I am just so happy that we're getting back on the show. And we've just had a busy few weeks with the symposium, which was really great and everything. As always, we're brought to you by kgradb.com. Please go and subscribe. There's so much great content on there. I know you're all going to love it. I love listening to all sorts of shows on KGRA. And we are also endorsed by MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, always asking that all-important question, are we alone in the universe? Tonight, we have a very special guest. We have Tracey Dolan. I am really excited to speak with her. I've never met her before, so I can't wait to learn all about her. I would also first like to bring in my co-host. We have the beautiful, wonderful, talented Katie Cook, just coming back from the UK. Welcome back from the welcome back to the States, Katie.
I'm back. Yeah, it was a whirlwind tour of England. It was absolutely fantastic, very exhausting, very exciting, and of course, I missed doing this every week while I was over there. But you were moving as well, so we just kind of needed a few weeks to all get some stuff done. But we are back, and I'm very excited to be back.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more about your trip. So, and let's bring in Christopher DePerno. He is the state director for New York and also on the ERT. Hello, Chris. Where's
Hi.
Jerry and Jenna?
They're on vacation. They'll be back next week.
Did they go to the UK too?
No, they didn't go to the UK. They went to Andromeda. So they took a left at Uranus, and they went to Pluto, and they put in. They got the app now, so they got the app, and they went to Andromeda.
Yeah, I hope they got the first class seats where they can lay down all the way, because that's a long journey.
Yeah, that is nice.
Jerry is awful cheap. They want Coach. I can tell you that right now.
Well, they're pretty small.
We got a special guest tonight, so I woke up with this tie on, and my wife said, "Don't worry about it," and it was pretty tight. So I don't know what's going on, but I woke up with
finally had enough.
What's my lucky tie doing on, Lori? She goes, I don't know. Maybe it's unlucky now.
Maybe planning an open casket. I don't know.
But anyways, we got a great guest tonight. Tracey, I thought I'd dress up a little bit with my lucky tie.
Oh, I see. So he doesn't do it for us. He doesn't do that for us, but for Tracey, he'll put the tie. I'll see.
Yep.
So, Katie, what do you have to kick us off today?
Well, I always like to get us giggling with a meme. And, our guest tonight is known for many things, including remote viewing. We are going to be talking about that. So I picked a funny remote viewing meme. For those of you just listening, it's, this meme should be so tired by now, but I never get tired of it. It's the one with the angry, Real Housewife on the left screaming at the little cat in front of the salad plate. It's so stupid, but I never get tired of it. And the woman screaming, "Remote viewers use their gifts to serve humanity." And the little snarly cat says, "Let me tell you about Bitcoin futures." Poor Bitcoin, just down in the dumps. But I say it's going to rally. I have faith, peeps. But that's a whole other show we'll talk about sometime. But let's talk about the pop of the week, our paranormal pops. Since I was gone for a few weeks, I missed July 4th. They just don't celebrate that in England. Wonder why. But it means I never got to show you these awesome patriotic pops. So here's what you missed. How freaking cute. So this is the little female alien, little male alien. They've got their little red, white, and blue on. And even Bigfoot's getting in on the action, with his flag and his little star pants. It's so cute. So as always, you can order these at paranormalpops.com. I wanted to give you guys plenty of time to think about next year's July 4th. But I didn't want those to go by and you not get to see how adorable they were, because
Those are
Wendy
cute.
Robinson works so hard on these pops. So I always want to
Thank you,
show
Wendy.
those off. We love you, Wendy. And finally, I found these really cool UFO ceiling lights. Christmas is only 5 months away.
Oh no.
I mean, I want that right here in my office. How crazy cool are those? I know they're probably made for a kid's room, but we're all kind of just grown-up children, aren't we?
If it had a fan on it, I'd put it right above my head because I have a fan up there. Oh, I wonder if we can add a fan element to that.
I mean, I just love those. And you can get these at litfad.com. That's LITFAD.com, litfad. So, again, just dropping a Christmas hint for anyone listening. All right, Chris, now the tie's gone. Now he's getting back into the casual Chris zone.
It was getting a little tight around my neck. But
Well, when Tracey comes on, you're going to have to put it back on.
all right. Geez, enough with the tie, for God's sake. Upstart Colonials did celebrate July 4th there, Miss Katie. I'm going to Britain, England, cook there. Us Upstart Colonials.
What you got for the news, Christopher?
Well, let's see what we got in the news. Oh yeah, okay, baby.
Oh no.
Oh no, where are we going?
Here we go.
Every week when we do this show, I feel like a butcher because I cut up these names of places so bad. And I got to tell you, this story right here, even the person that I found who's an expert on this, he says, I can't even pronounce the names right. Wait a minute. All right.
This is going to be good.
Oh boy.
Buckle up. Buckle up, Katie.
Oh, God. Ooh. All right. El Tabarzaco, the Asian temple dedicated to the drunken rabbit god. On a lonely peak of the Sierra de Pazatagua in the state of Morelos in Mexico stands the Aztec temple of El Tapazaco. The temple is dedicated to a group of 400 drunken rabbits who reside over drunken revelries. You know what? I got to go party there, folks. Apart from drunkenness, and they're taking pulaki, the traditional alcohol beverage of the Aztecs, Tepezacatlaca, the chief of the 400 divine rabbits, Tepezacatlaca. What a name for a god. Anyways, the chief of the 400 divine rabbits. Can you imagine my kingdom for 400 rabbits? Anyways, let's go on. He is normally depicted in drawings with his nose pointed upward and his face colored half red and half black. The face of the 400 rabbits in the stages of drunkenness. You want to see drunkenness, folks? Here you go. Yeah, that's my rabbit. The Aztecs had an abundance of gods of the drinks, 400 rabbits to be precise. They were all the offspring of the goddess of alcohol. I gotta meet her, baby. And
Right here.
Right here. She's the goddess of alcohol. I don't care if she's the goddess of anything else. She's the goddess of alcohol. While Malahula embodied in the agrave of Magi plant, which gave the sap of the pulag.
What are they doing to these bunnies?
They're getting them drunk. They're gods. Have a little respect.
Oh my
Habitat
goodness.
and the other rabbit god was said to have discovered the fermentation process that gave it its punch. The myth goes that the rabbits met regularly for drunken parties. They could range anywhere from 1 to 20 rabbits. What the hell? You got to have a lot of rabbits for a drunken party. And if one was hopelessly drunk, he would be as drunk as 400 rabbits. That's my boy. The Aztec name for the children of Mahuahu was Sinsan Tuto Chichen, meaning 400 rabbits. I don't care if your name was San, it means 400 rabbits in Maya. But they were often referred to as Aztec gods of drunkenness. I got to tell you, that's why the Mayans aren't around anymore. The Aztecs and the Mayans, they all got drunk and they died of alcohol poisoning. Although most of these rabbit siblings were referred to only by the numbers, they did have the names of the gods. Anyways, Amanda, roll that tape of the 400 rabbits.
So let's move off to Latin America with the rabbits, all 400 of them. And if that sounds familiar to you, there is a place at the Alamo Draft House, Slaughter Lane, right? let's get to what that name means. All right. So, when the universe was young, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, saw that there was no plant that could make mankind happy. So, as the wind god Hecatl, he went to go seek out the virgin goddess Mayahuel, and together they went to seek a plant, but in the process fell in love. This annoyed the grandmother goddess Tzitzimitl. Try saying these names. She was trying to protect the honor of Mayahuel. So Hecatl and Mayahuel fled to earth, disguised themselves as a plant. Tzitzimitl realized she was too late, sent her Tzitzimeme demons to chop up the plant, cut it down. Hecatl got away just fine, but when he came back, he saw Mayahuel was in pieces. Where he buried her bones, the first maguey plants grew. Don't feel bad for her, because while she stopped being a virgin goddess, she got to become a mother goddess. With her husband, the god of drunkenness, Petacatl, she had 400 children, which she took care of with her 400 breasts. I should point out that for Mesoamerica, the number 400 is like saying millions and millions and millions, because it just means a big number. So she might as well have had infinite children and infinite breasts. The milk, however, was pulque. I actually thought about going into the origin of wine and other things I'm going to talk about, but I figure most of you guys know how wine is made. It hasn't really changed in thousands of years. But if you don't know what pulque is, there are farmers called tlachiqueros, and they will go to the maguey plants, and they will collect the sap of that plant they call agua miel, or honey water. They will allow it to ferment, and it becomes this milky, white, alcoholic drink called pulque. Now, according to folk tradition, some farmers were out one day, and they saw some rabbits that had all passed out near a plant. And the first thing the farmers thought was, I got to drink what those rabbits drank. And I'm thinking to myself, if I see a bunch of passed out animals, I want to eat whatever they ate, because I'm sure it's healthy. According to another tradition, only the Aztec kings were allowed to drink pulque. According to yet another tradition, the Virgen de Guadalupe is also tied to this, in that she is also called the mother of maguey, and that pulque is called milk of the virgin. So there's that. So there's 400 rabbits called the Zentontotochtin. I'm going to say a lot of words today, and if you can speak these languages better than me, let me know. So the Zentontotochtin, the 400 rabbits, each represent a specific type of drunkenness or a reason to get drunk or one of the results of drinking, good or bad. So they each have different names. One of them is called Two Rabbit. His name is Tepoztecatl. And by the way, Mesoamerican names tend to be tied to a day name, which is a number with one of about 20 nouns. So he is Two Rabbit, Mayahuel is One Rabbit, I am Six Jaguar, goes on like that. Tepoztecatl is a god of drunkenness, a god of the moon, and a culture hero. When his people were conquered in a war, they were forced to give one old man a year to be fed to the feathered serpent of their rivals. So Tepoztecatl disguised himself, although very young, he disguised himself as an old man, went down to earth, volunteered as tribute, and when the feathered serpent appeared, he killed it.
Can you imagine? We're going to get this guy drunk so we can get him eaten. You can't make this stuff up, folks. What do you think, Cookie?
Well, I know why you wanted to bring us this story. I think it was the 400 breasts part that piqued your interest.
That's my kind of woman, baby.
Yeah. And I think maybe Tzitzimitl got kind of mad at all the drunk dudes, and they were like, "It's the rabbits. It's the rabbits. It's not us." It's a pretty wild story. I don't know what to think of that.
What do you think, Katie?
Well, maybe that's why rabbits, we don't see mutilated rabbits. They're still sacred. I don't know. I don't even know what to
think. That's why
think.
they multiply so much.
Maybe. I was thinking that actually, like, I wonder what happens, when they're all drunk. I mean, maybe that's where that comes from.
They got the beer goggles on. They're like, you'll do. Come here, baby.
All I know is, man,
very
after
interesting
this show,
stuff.
I'm going to go buy some of that pulque or whatever the hell that milky
Okay,
stuff
now I
is.
think that's how you say it.
Yeah, pulque. I've said it right. Pulque. Hey, first time in my history.
Little victories.
All right, let's
Good
get on
one.
to the second story. Wait a minute. I got to get ready for the second one.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, boy. Okay, Candy.
Okay.
Pilot.
Is it a pilot or a police?
Not a pilot.
Oh. What? I thought it was a pilot.
Your friendly neighborhood cop is on duty. All right. This is a crime story. Oklahoma man blames Bigfoot summoning for alleged murder of fishing buddy. Don't go fishing and try to call Bigfoot. In a bizarre story out of Oklahoma, a man was arrested for allegedly killing his friend during a fishing trip, police reported. The deadly incident came about in response to his companion summoning a Bigfoot to attack him. According to a local media report, the very weird case occurred this past Saturday afternoon near the city of Alda. Can you get Bigfoot to assassinate people? Lori? As Larry Sanders and Jim Knightington were attempting to catch catfish in the southern Canadian River by way of their bare hands using a technique known as noodling, I guess you could fish with your hands. However, their day took a dark turn when the two fishing buddies got into a disagreement, which ultimately left Knightington dead and Sanders pointing the finger at Sasquatch. He did it, not me. Responding to a report of a homicide that had unfolded at the river, police said that they arrived to find Sanders recounting his role in Knightington's death to a family member. Upon being questioned by deputies at the scene, the noodler confessed to killing his friend by first striking him, then strangling him. Hence, I'm not wearing a tie. As for why he did it, Sanders shockingly explained that Knightington had summoned Bigfoot to come and kill me. And in order to save his own life, the man concluded that he had to silence his companion before the proverbial call to action reached the ears of Sasquatch. Oh my God, thank God. This is why I had a job for 25 years. And what might be the latest surprising aspect of the case, police also observed that Sanders appeared to be under the influence of something. You think?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
While the misguided measure of self-defense appeared to make him the suspect, since he was not killed by Bigfoot, Sanders was subsequently arrested for Knightington's murder. And after police recovered the downed noodler's body from the river the following day, musing that the man's forthcoming nature makes it easier to prosecute the case. Wouldn't it be great if Bigfoot showed up? Sheriff John Christen indicated that you still have to prove all the elements of the crime and that what the suspect is telling you is actually what happened. Since it is unlikely that Sanders will be able to find Bigfoot to testify on it, he's likely facing an uphill legal battle in which he is found guilty. I'll put $100 on that one. Could ironically accumulate with him facing the death penalty for the Sasquatch-inspired slaying. Amanda, you got to roll that tape.
The Pontotoc County Sheriff's Department responded to a call just outside of Ada city limits about an alleged murder Saturday afternoon. Deputies arrived at the scene to suspect Larry Sanders admitting to a family member that he had killed his friend Jimmy Knighton. As part of the investigation, the Sheriff's Department was able to uncover a motive.
Appeared to be under the influence of something, and so his statement was that Mr. Knighton had summoned Bigfoot to come in and kill him, and that's why he had to kill Mr. Knighton.
Search agencies in the Pontotoc County Sheriff's Department weren't able to locate the victim's body until Sunday afternoon. Now, the Sheriff's Department begins working on proof of the alleged crime.
It always makes it easier. You still have to prove all the elements of the crime and what the suspect is telling you. You have to prove that's actually what happened.
As Sanders awaits his trial and charges in the Pontotoc County Jail, Sheriff Christian says the death penalty is the harshest punishment that the prosecution could push for. In Ada, Alex Porter, ABC 10, First News.
Wow.
Well, that's a new one. Heard it all.
25 years is the first time Bigfoot has been a person of interest in my book. Cookie, what do you think?
Oh my God. Well, kudos for the sergeant for keeping a straight face while describing the facts. I mean, he didn't crack up there. So okay, go with me here for a second. I think most likely he woke up in the jail cell the next day and was just like, What have I done? But what if he actually is in touch with Bigfoot and could actually make that call and be like, look, my dude's out of line. I'm calling Sasquatch. What if? Just what if? What if it was real? And then
Well,
he
they-
could
How
just
much would
summon him.
Yeah, but think about it. Bigfoot could be the next Iceman. What if you can kind of pay? Hey, you know what? I want to get rid of my wife. How much, Bigfoot?
How do you pay Bigfoot? What kind of money does Bigfoot
I don't
take?
know. Maybe you bring a couple
Bitcoin.
of dead deer
Chicken legs?
carcasses.
Yeah.
Chicken legs,
With food.
deer carcass. I don't know.
Drunk rabbits. Drunk rabbits. That's what
Drunk
Bigfoot
rabbits.
likes.
Katie, what do you
That's
think
right.
of this story?
I mean, there's books written about psychic Sasquatch. So I agree with Katie here. I mean, maybe some people do have this connection to Bigfoot and they want them to do their dirty work. I don't know. This is a
Well,
first. This is kind of crazy.
this guy, he didn't have the connection because boys and girls, he's sitting in jail. So the motive of the story is don't ask Bigfoot to do your dirty work.
No.
Don't ask Bigfoot.
You'll
to
end up
do
in the
nothing.
slammer death penalty.
All right, that's the news for the week.
That
Wow,
might be
interesting.
your- possibly the most interesting week ever for
Yeah,
news from you.
I agree.
I approve. All right. Well, KDP, do we have a case of the week?
Well, I don't, but since you were in the UK, there's this footage online that's making all this noise and buzz. It comes from, there was a picture posted on UFO footage on Twitter. And basically, it was a triple UFO sighting over West London in the UK. 3 metallic silver UFO orbs or spheres were filmed flying in one direction, then changing to another direction, and then they gathered together. So, Katie, did you see anything over there while you were there?
I didn't. I actually did spend the night that this happened. I think it was on the 12th, and I was in West London, but I was way too busy eating my fabulous dinner and getting ready to leave the next day. I wasn't looking at the sky, so I didn't see it. And
Wow.
I mean, who knows if that's real or not, but I did see a lot of comments to this story, and there's a ton of people claiming that they saw it, and some people saying, I'm going to post my video. So might be one to keep an eye on, but I can tell you if it was ET, they're lucky they didn't melt. It was so freaking hot in London that day because there's no AC like in England ever. So it was really, really hot. But I thought that was a pretty interesting one. So no UFO sightings for me, but I did get to go to Stonehenge and Avebury.
I saw
and
those
I'm
pictures.
wow.
Look at
Yeah.
that. Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous.
rocking out my
So-
saucer shirt.
Was the energy different there? What did you think of it? What were your impressions?
Well, Stonehenge is always really busy. It's hard to, that picture makes it look like there was hardly anyone there that day. I just got lucky with that one particular second that I took the picture. But, they don't let you get close to the rocks anymore unless you have some really exclusive access. But Avebury is like 30 minutes down the road. That's me standing at one of the giant rocks there. And I got to tell you, that place, the energy is crazy. And they still let you walk right up to the rocks and hug them. And I just didn't want to leave. I felt so at home there. It was really beautiful energy. So I imagine I would at Stonehenge as well, but they just really kind of keep you far away from the rocks. But overall, it was just a great experience and had a really good time.
That's
Really,
good to
really
know. So
nice.
you can't like walk into the center of it or anything.
No, I think there's like on the solstice. And I think if you maybe pay a whole lot of money and know the right people, maybe every now and then you can get closer access. But in general, you're going to show up and have to go pretty far around the outside. But it's still really worth doing. I mean, to see the rocks in person. Sometimes there's criticism, when you say, well, how could they have had the technology to build that? And people are like, well, you need to give, those people more credit. They probably did have some way to do it. And maybe it wasn't aliens involved in all of that, but it's still pretty freaking impressive. They are massive, massive rocks and supposedly came from really far away. And it's hard to picture them just rolling them on logs for, a couple 100 miles.
Are they still getting a lot of crop circles around Stonehenge?
They are still getting crop circles around there. And I didn't see any. You don't always see them from the road, though. They let things grow up pretty high and you've got to get back in there. I actually knew a guy from England that studied crop circles for years and then met a lot of people that were making them. They've gotten very good at making them quickly. I still don't think that means all of them were man-made, but a lot of them are. But I didn't have enough time to go into that on this trip. I'd like to go back and really focus on that. That'd be really cool.
A trip.
I know. Do a little what's up from the UK. That'd be a little fun.
Book recommendation. Yeah.
I do have a few. So, we had Deb Jordan Cobble on a few months ago, and I just wanted to give everyone a reminder of her book, but I'm going to let her talk about it in her own words. Amanda?
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on What's Up. I appreciate it. And my name is Debbie Jordan Cobble. In UFO community, I'm probably better known as Kathy Davis from Bud Hopkins' book Intruders, The Incredible Visitations at Copley Woods. Yep, that's me. That's my life. A lot of things happened to me prior to the June 30th, 1983 incident that was the catalyst for Intruders. And a lot of things have happened to me since then. My memories go way back to childhood. And I have had strange experiences all the way up till present time. Although the physical experiences that I had in my teen years, young adulthood, and on June 30, 83 have pretty much ceased. My experiences have flipped from physical to what I call metaphysical. I have more paranormal activity than I did prior to June 30, 83 in some instances, and a lot of like lucid dreaming and things like that. We had a lot of paranormal activity while I was a kid growing up, but I didn't realize that it was paranormal. I thought it was just normal. I had no idea that nobody else lived this way or had these things happen to them. I thought it was just everybody did. It was life. And I quickly discovered in elementary school that it's not. And so I quit talking about it so much. But it's always been there. I have written a book as a companion to Intruders. The first one I wrote with my older sister, called Abducted, The Story of Intruders Continues, is long out of print. I don't know if you can even find it anywhere. But the one that I recently finished and which was published in August is called Extraordinary Contact, Life Beyond Intruders. And in that I chronicle my life going forward from Intruders all the way up until last year, all the way through COVID. And that's when I finished it. And it was picked up and published by August Night Press, gratefully. So if you want to know more about me and my story in my life, you can check that book out. And I also have a website called debshome.com, and you can come and learn more about me there, more about Intruders, and you can even write to me through there if you like. Thank you so much, everybody at What's Up, for having me, and I hope I will get to see you all soon.
Thank you, Deb.
Oh,
That's,
love her.
Love her.
She is the absolute best, and that book is available on Amazon. And while we're talking about books, a couple more, if you'll indulge me. I want to remind everyone about Katie's book, Letters of Love and Light.
Oh, thank you, Katie.
Yeah, I'm like, we should be mentioning it every week. It's such a fabulous book. Do you want to give everyone your like 1 minute elevator pitch on why they should read this fabulous book? Because it is really important.
Ironically, this Saturday is Dr. Leo Sprinkles in Laramie, Wyoming. It's his memorial service. So we're packing a picnic and we're going to go share memories and really honor this pioneer of the field who really was an early advocate for contactees and abductees, and a man who is just generous with his time and spirit and energy, and wrote a book, Soul Samples. Check out Dr. Lear's book, where he just really runs down numbers and statistics on contactees and abductees. But basically, I went there for selfish reasons to do my own research on my ranch, the Colorado Ranch, and I got lost for 3 years in all these letters from people around the world, and I put them all into a book and honored Dr. Sprinkles. So that's that. And Katie, what about your books? You need to talk about your books. I have them right there on my shelf, right behind me.
You're so sweet. Yeah, I've never talked about them on the show. I actually just did a quick re-edit, and so they were kind of pulled down off of Amazon for a couple of months, but they're back up now. And
good.
So yeah, just indulge me for a minute here. They're called Little Big Benny, the boy who didn't know he was the universe. And yeah, Benny's very curious about the world. He's a budding astronomer, and he's very curious about his place in the universe. He doesn't know he is the universe. There's all these wonderful little characters that live on a micro level within him, and they're no more aware of him than he is of them. But there's all this cause and effect on a macro and micro scale. And his best friend Harmony, that he met at space camp, always has his back. And of course, Benny's being monitored by aliens from outer space because, you know, I had to make that really fun. And Zubel and Zagney are the two that were sent to monitor him, and they get very bored. They're very mischievous, so they stir up all kinds of dramatic scenarios in Benny's life. But the book's it's fun of, really fun and full of good messages, like don't judge a book by its cover, walk a mile in someone else's shoes kind of stuff. And there's some astronomy and science in the mix. And I made sure to make it fun for adults to read too, because,
I love them.
as a parent, oh, thank you. As a parent, sometimes you're the one reading these books to the kids. And, I read a whole lot of books to my kids.
Right.
And,
grandparents too, they need to get these for their grandkids, because I'm like grandma. I'm like the woo grandma, like she's into some interesting stuff, but they're wonderfully illustrated, and there's good messages, and they're just beautiful. Everybody should have the whole set.
Katie, when will they be back up again?
They're up now, so you can go to Amazon, Little Big Benny. If you just look up, you can look up Katie Cook and Little Big Benny, and they're going to pop right up. And it's a trilogy, and I might write 4, 5, and 6 at some point, but I'm back to just promoting these first 3, and hopefully I'll see it animated one day. That would be really awesome. Great. But yeah, thanks for letting me do those little plugs. And maybe, I don't know, maybe in a future episode we can read a few pages out of these books, because
that'd be fun.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun.
But I actually read a book the other day, so that's a first for me.
Did you know?
Yeah, the television went out, so I had nothing to do.
Well, and I'm still waiting for you to write the Jenna and Jerry love story. I think we may still need to do that at some point.
I think there's something. I think there's something going on. They took the vacation together.
Oh,
no, they might have eloped. Might come back with
come back married.
Alien. You never know.
You never know. There's some weird stuff going on with those two.
I think, is it time to bring on our guest? Let's bring her on. I think
that
so.
Would be wonderful.
All right.
She can remote view Jenna and Jerry.
Oh, yeah, we should ask her. Anyway, Tracey Dolan is a remote viewer, abduction encounter researcher, and member of the UFO research community. Tracey has lectured internationally on her series, The Final Frontier is in Here, relying on some of her own personal experiences as a means of opening the discussion on what we as humans are able to do innately. She is the wife of UFO historian Richard Dolan, directs the Richard Dolan Members website, and co-hosts the Off the Cuff podcast with Richard and Tracey prior to their podcast. Tracey and her husband hosted the YouTube program Intelligent Disclosure, which is still available on their channel. She earned her interdisciplinary bachelor's degree in psychology and international studies, magna cum laude, and has a lifelong interest in anomalous experiences. Welcome to the show, Tracey. I am so honored to finally meet you. I've never met you in person.
It's so nice to meet you too, and thank you all for having me.
Of course. I really just want to dig down, since I've never met you before. Where did this all begin for you? How did you get into this whole world here?
Oh, wow. Well, I think like a lot of people who end up in this community, a series of things happened to me growing up that made me realize that reality is not exactly what everybody's telling us. And, it really sort of created an isolating experience. And it required that I sort of either just accept that, or I go through a personal journey of trying to figure out, is something wrong with me, or am I okay? Are there other people like me? So, I had things like I would have random visitations. I would have random, I don't really like to use the word visions very much, but some people will dream when someone's going to die, and some people will see it in a day sort of overlay. And that was the situation for me with my own father. And but those were just a couple of things. But I grew up with things like this happening, and there was just a point where I just wanted to know, what's the truth? What's really going on? And so in my pursuit of that, and pursuit of trying to feel normal, I was exploring, and I was looking for anything to do with building a framework around the experiences that were happening to me. And eventually, when you enter into sort of the metaphysical worlds and the consciousness worlds, you do end up running into UFOs, as I did. So I actually ran into them more through remote viewing, and I ran into remote viewing just because I was, it was part of my exploration. I was going to channeled schools. I was going to the Monroe Institute. I was going to just about anywhere that I could get my hands on, where I could try to push the limits of my mind and see what's out there that people know they can do with their minds, and how do they cope? How do they deal? How do they live in this world? And then, once you open up that can of worms, here comes UFOs, and it all comes down to who are we? Who are we really? Where are humans from? We know where we're where we're from in an evolutionary sense, but where are we? Where is the part of us when you have an out-of-body experience and you're separated from your body? Where is that part of us from? So it was kind of this pursuit of the existential questions of, who am I? Who are we? And I didn't believe there was anything wrong with us if we were having experiences outside of what society was telling us was normal. It's kind of a big answer to your question, but it's really sort of the core of what I'm about. It's just all about this pursuit of who we really are. So that's how I ran into it.
I love that.
It's a beautiful answer because it helps
great.
kind of illustrate a lot of the things that we're going to get into, in this interview. And I feel like a lot of people that have had contact or, are experiencers, they start digging deep. If they weren't before, they're certainly going to. I think if they ignore that, they're probably going to go a little bit crazy. I mean, it I think intentionally opens us up, and we have to dig deep. And you mentioned Monroe Institute. I might as well get paid by Monroe for always talking about them, because
I feel the same way.
I believe in their work so much.
Me
I'm actually
too.
going again in Arizona, and I'm in I think December. I'm so excited. But and you mentioned OBEs. I'll be honest with you. The first time I went to Monroe, it was to actually, even though I'm a grown woman and I shouldn't be so scared of the dark and everything, but when you've had a lot of experiences, one of your big things you have to do, I think for most of us, is to handle the fear that can go along with it. It's kind of like, yes, I want to walk into that dark cave and I want to know all the secrets, and I want to feel around and get to know myself, but it's also a dark cave. It can be, emotionally speaking. So I'm just wondering, before we move on, were some of these experiences for you when you were younger, were they frightening? And is that something you've had to deal with, is handling that fear?
Oh yeah, you mentioned fear of the dark. That is, to this day, still a problem for me. Yeah, I had to cope with that at the Monroe Institute. I'll get into that in a second, because as you know, they have, the rooms are kind of isolated, and you want to deprive your senses. And so for a lot of us who have this hypervigilance, or these seeds of trauma, or whatever you want to call it, like fear of the dark, we have to cope. We have to deal with those things. But yes, one of the weird things about my childhood is I don't know where that trauma came from. I spent a long time trying to look for it. I had experiences when I was older that are really suspicious, and I call them, sometimes it depends who I'm talking to, I'll call them suspected contact experiences, but there's a part of us that when these things happen to you. But I just don't remember if something really bad happened when I was younger. But a lot of the things that happened that I recall were scary. But they weren't what I would consider your typical UFO alien type of contact. They were more like, although we can never fully say sometimes, they were a little more paranormal, the first ones I remember. They weren't all scary, by the way, but some of them were. I have a bit of a history with, I don't know. I usually don't talk about this a lot, but I'm going to. When someone's going to die, I will sometimes, and I never know when it's going to happen, I will have a visitation and they'll let me know, and I'm supposed to let someone else know, or it's not something I'm looking for. and it's not something I can control. It just happens sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's been some scary times, but the thing about that type, when they happened, I ended up learning these beautiful lessons. Occasionally they would be something that was really scary, and then they would end. Once I would talk to the person, I would understand it better. Like that person committed suicide and died as an alcoholic, and it was more of the feeling of that person that was so scary than the actual entity, like the actual person. So there were scary things like that. And then as far as what I can remember, when the things that were a little less paranormal, a little more on the spectrum of what we usually talk about, encounters and contactees, I did have a hooded being appear in my room across from, I was with a friend, and the being appeared across from us in front of our TV. And it was just a flash. Yeah, that's it. And it took me years before I drew this. And the funny thing about that one is when it happened, I wasn't afraid at all. In fact, I always describe it as kind of neutral to positive. But this is where I know that there's also some cognitive manipulation involved in all of this. And it tells me we don't really know who we're dealing with. We can say, oh, that's a hooded being, but would that really be the normal reaction for any of us if we saw a 7-foot hooded being where you can't see the face standing in front of you? I'd be like, yeah, that was a pretty positive experience, Like, I don't think so.
No.
So I mean, I guess every topic we talk about is kind of loaded, because there were scary things. There were some positive things. There were scary things. And I think sometimes with screen memories and the way these beings could be approaching us, our psyche might not be able to handle it. So I might not, and other people might not fully be able to pinpoint a time sometimes, because something that appeared positive to us ended up leaving, like in the subconscious, these seeds of something slightly more, I don't want to use the word sinister, but you know what I mean, a little more negative.
Yeah.
And so we end up with these strange hypervigilant behaviors. Like the fear of the dark for me is a huge ordeal to this day. And I feel like a child when I go to the Monroe Institute. And you want to go through the sensory deprivation. And I worked through it a lot there because I've been there a lot as well. And you want to put the blackout curtain on. You want to have the lights off. You want to, fully engage these things. I mean, we're all going to these places because we want those answers. We want to engage these things. We want to see what our consciousness is connected to. And so we have to walk through those doors of dealing with those sort of little seeds of something that's kind of messing with us and leaving these traces that are affecting us. My background is psychology, so pretty much everything I end up talking about comes around to us as humans and how we feel psychologically about all these things. But
well, that's
I
good.
hope I sort of answered your question.
No, that's absolutely a perfect answer, and I'm hoping to get kind of a free session out of this from you.
Sorry, I'm like I go all over the place.
That's good.
First, Tracey, I want to thank you for coming on the show. This is awesome because,
Thanks,
I'm a big
Chris.
fan of yours. I watched you lecture on remote viewing a few years ago and was the best lecturer at the symposium. It was absolutely amazing. I go, holy cow, this girl's got her act together. For the people who don't know what remote viewing is, because I've been studying some remote viewing and some of it kind of scares me. But for people who are listening and don't know what remote viewing is, could you first explain what remote viewing is? Because I mean, I have 28 questions to ask you, but I want first of all to get a basis. What exactly is remote viewing for the listeners?
Okay, so to put it in a way that I would have wanted to hear it in the beginning, it's like, because we can talk all technical about it, but this is the way I'd want to hear it. It's sort of like your intuition with a set of instructions on top of it. So that's really what it is. But classically, remote viewing is you're using just your mind and you are attempting to gather and perceive psychic impressions about something that's hidden from you. So that's really what it is. So classically, we might talk about in the sense of like when you're going through learning and practicing, they might hide something in an envelope, a picture of something in an envelope, and it could be anything like a person, a place, a thing, an event, and you will practice doing this over time, instead of, they in classic remote viewing, that began at the Stanford Research Institute and was taken on by the military. You can imagine when it's being used for intelligence gathering, they're trying to develop a reliable system, right? They want to see if is ESP real, extrasensory perception, is it real? And can we repeat it in a lab? That's what remote viewing was. Can we repeat it in a lab? So they were trying to figure out, can they break it down into some instructions that can work over and over and over that help the person be able to tell the difference of the monkey mind and just the chatter and the guessing that our ego will do, and separate that from genuine psychic impressions. So did that make sense?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And they had great success with this too, didn't they? I mean,
they
were
did.
able to. Yeah.
Oh, they did. I was just going to say, I love this list. I always keep it beside me because for people, there's still people out there who, haven't looked into it, and they still, question whether it's real. And I love bringing this up for the people who still aren't sure if it's real, who might be watching. This was published by the Society for Psychical Research. And here's who the customers were. I love this list. The CIA, the DIA, the Secret Service, the Air Force Intelligence Agency, the Naval Intelligence Command, Naval Investigation Services Command, the National Security Agency, NSA, Army Intelligence and Security Command, the NSC, the National Security Council, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, Drug Enforcement, DEA, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And if that was not enough, the Coast Guard, and random other ones. So, so somebody believes it's real. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and Joe McMoneagle was tapped like 1,500 times for these different agencies. And so I always like to answer the question for people because of the comments I've seen in the past, like, they just think that it's crap. And it's not. There was really something to this. Tax dollars went into this and paid for this for 20 years. And the military got into it as well, understandably, because they had heard that the Soviets at the time were using psychic spies. And so they wanted to see if the US could create psychic spies. So it's basically what it is. It's psychic spying created in a lab with instructions.
Wow. So you were obviously connected to something it sounds like a pretty young age. Where did you grow up again? You grew up in Canada, is that right?
I did grow up in Canada, kind of all over the place, but Southern Ontario, and a little bit of time in New Brunswick for high school. But I actually spent most of my life in BC, in Vancouver.
Okay. Oh, nice.
And then Florida, and then New York.
Wow. You've been
I moved around a bit.
So unlike you and Katie, I've never been to the Monroe Institute. I would love to go sometime. So maybe I could get there someday. But is remote viewing then like you must lucid dream where you go in and can kind of control your dreams? It's kind of taking that a step further and maybe making it more detailed. So you're actually going places. Is that correct? I mean, do you lucid dream?
No, are we asking this in terms of remote viewing? If it's
I just kind of connected. Well, first, do you lucid dream, and second, is it kind of like remote viewing? I mean, do you need to lucid dream in order to remote view?
No, you do not.
Okay,
you do not need to.
Okay.
Yes, I do. I track my dreams. It's part of my own study of myself that I do. Even higher, it has higher importance to me than remote viewing. That
Okay.
self-study of our own symbols and understanding the language of our subconscious mind with ourself. No matter what discipline you do, whether you practice lucid dreaming or you study your dreams and the dream symbolism or you remote view, it's all really the same thing. You're learning the language of your subconscious, in my opinion. But as far as if they're the same, I suppose there's overlap, but you don't have to be a lucid dreamer to remote view. And
Okay.
one thing I like to do to kind of describe it in the way that I like to, just I would have liked to have understood this, is I think one way to think about it is it has these different levels of engagement. This is how I explain it. So, for example, you could be attempting to get information about a target that's hidden in an envelope, and you might just, quiet your mind, and all of a sudden, the thing with remote viewing is you don't try to get it. This is a subtle, interesting thing. You just cool down and you have your intention of the number on the envelope, for example, and you're trying to do the opposite. You want to let the information emerge. You're waiting for it. And so in what I call sort of a lower level of engagement, you might just have a quick impression of something. Say it's the Eiffel Tower. You just might have this quick impression, and there doesn't feel like any sort of similarity to lucid dreaming or out of body or anything like that. And there's another level, at least for me, where it feels a little bit deeper. I'm kind of locked in and engaged on a target. Like a little bit of information will come, it will stay, and it's not like seeing something on a TV. So like lucid dreaming, we always think about as something that's really clear and vivid, right? And I think this is one of the misunderstandings about remote viewing. For most people, it's not like that at all. It's like a super fuzzy TV, and it's like you're getting fragments. And with patience, you allow those things to come in a little bit more. That's part of what the discipline about it is you can't chase it. You have to allow it. It's very meditative in a way, especially when you're learning it, and you're trying to allow those fragments to come in clearer. And at this level, what you will begin to do is you will ask yourself questions. So these are part of the protocols that they designed in the lab. Like you're interviewing your own mind. So you'll be saying things like, you could have a blank screen still, and you might start asking yourself, okay, is it man-made or is it natural? And if you're quiet enough, there's a part of you that's going to answer it. It's kind of like when you're at least for me, when you're in a therapy session, and sometimes the therapist will ask a crazy question and you'll answer something that you didn't even realize. It comes out of nowhere and you answered your own big dilemma. I don't know if you've ever had that happen. Yeah, right. It's kind of like when the right question is asked, and if your ego isn't resisting, like just making up excuses and saying all this stuff. If you can quiet that part, which happens in a therapy session, when you're really listening to what they're saying and they ask you a question, the answer comes up. And this is kind of what it's like. I've never made that analogy before, but it is.
It's a great one.
It's kind of what it's like. You quiet
really
that part down, and this truth comes out. And so you might not be able to, coming back to the lucid dreaming, it could still be fragments. So some people will see the fragments. Some people will hear sounds of something. Some people will smell things, but some people will just get, they'll just know. It's like, it feels like metal. I don't know why, but you don't question anything, which is kind of fascinating. You don't question anything. You're just going to record everything that happens. But this is really what it is. It's the parts that come up that surprise you that are usually the psychic signal that you want to write down. And then I'm getting more towards your question. There's another level of engagement where it's experiential. And this is where it gets closer to lucid dreaming. And when you're starting to feel the target is usually the doorway. When you start feeling and smelling, and I have my one remote view to talk about with this after, but when you start having an experiential feeling, some people, I try to stay away from these words, but some people might call it bilocating, or they might call it, this would be closer to lucid dreaming or out of body, because there's you that's here at the desk with a piece of paper and a pencil, but then there's your consciousness that seems to be connected to the target and is feeling the environment. So this is where it's like lucid dreaming. I never thought about that before, but you are entering into another place and you can move your mind around and look at it. And again, some parts might not be clear, but when you're engaged in this feeling experiential version, you can kind of manipulate it, like move around, look from above, like you could in a lucid dream. But lucid dreaming is not a precursor. It's not a prerequisite. It's not necessary. But probably you could, if you can do that, you would be good at this.
Wow.
So,
That's
I don't know
really
if you're a
great.
lucid dreamer, but
I am.
Oh,
That's
you
why I asked
are.
the question. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
is break time, and I know Katie Cook's going to come in. She has a question she's been dying to ask. So let's take our break, and we will be back more with Tracey Dolan. Hang in there, guys.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Scrolling all day, time can disappear. Wanna make it count? Why not volunteer?
Posting pics of your food, that takes up time. Time, you got time to binge all of season 9, though it got so bad.
Time, you got time. We're gonna grow back and be the same browse you had.
Just a few hours to keep families from harm. Help us end home fires with Sound the Alarm.
Volunteer for a day to install free smoke alarms in your community.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
Oh yeah, get down. Okay, I have so many questions. I don't even know where to start. I want 5 more hours on this show.
I'm trying to figure out where you're swimming to.
I love the questions you guys are asking me. I've never
Oh, you
answered
ain't seen
them in
nothing
quite
yet,
this way,
sister.
so I hope it's all right.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
It's perfect.
I got pages of notes for you.
All right, well, I'll go fast. I'm going to squeeze 2 together here and just let you go where you
Sure.
want to go. First of all, you talk about how sometimes the stuff that comes to you when you're remote viewing or meditating, well, I'm throwing meditating in there. I can't remember if you said that or not, but sometimes
Yeah,
the
I
stuff
probably
that
did.
surprises you feels like the stuff you can trust the most, because I get in my
Yeah.
own way. I don't know if it's ego or just a creative
Yep.
brain, but sometimes I'll be like, ooh, I like that. And I start going there and I almost start painting up the
Squirrel.
vision myself.
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
And
We're
then I'm
all like
like,
that.
okay, now I've clouded the whole thing with myself. So I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of ask you how you can clear the mind and get out of your own way enough to trust what's coming through, and then whether or not you've ever used it in abduction cases.
Okay, so the first part, how you do it to sort of keep it clear. Well, I think a lot of people, after you go through all the training, you develop your own rituals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this can be said of remote viewing, but it can be said of all of these types of disciplines that are related modalities. It all, like, people used to say this, and I was like, yeah, but I really believe this. A huge part of it is aligning a whole bunch of variables in yourself. And one of those is having a super clear intention. Um, is so important. I mean, you'll hear some of the most important, the biggest remote viewers like Joe McMoneagle will say, when he was doing his remote viewing, he wanted every single person in the room, whether they had any affiliation with him or not. You know, if they were in the background, part of the target being blind, he wanted everyone to be focused in one direction with that strong intent, with the belief that they can get it right.
Mm.
You know, that it's a possibility. So I think there's so much to the mindset. You want to have that childlike mindset. You want to have your intention, you know, rock solid. You want to make sure that you have, I call it sort of neutralizing everything in your environment so nothing is bothering you. People don't talk about that really, but I think it's super important. You have to, because I feel like whether it's meditation or no matter what you're doing, there's something to having conviction, especially these days in our busy world, having conviction that, okay, mind, we're going to work together now, and I am going to commit to letting everything else in the outer world go away. So I will go through a process of neutralizing things as silly as, like, if I have to go to the bathroom, I need something to eat, I need something to drink, I want chapstick. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
my pet needs something. I forgot to do this text. Like, you got to go through this process of committing to yourself, and that is part of it. So there's the commitment, the intention, because really there is so much pulling at us these days. It does take a lot for us to even prepare to get the mind to be clear. And so those things are underestimated. So that's part of it for me. And then a cool down for some people, you know, they will do up to an hour cool down. And when I started, I used to do that every time. I used to do, you know, an hour meditation, because I was very, very serious about what I was doing. But you know, eventually no one's going to want to do an hour meditation, an hour cool down before. And so I worked my way up until where I didn't even have more than a 60-second cool down, you know. But
And you're
that's
talking about cool down to get ready to do.
Sorry. Yeah,
like
that's a
ahead of
term
time.
we use sometimes. It's just like, we could also call it just a meditation. You're dropping away the world. It's like when you're dropping into a meditation, or you're taking a few breaths, and you just imagine, you know, you breathe in clarity and you breathe out anything that isn't necessary for what you're doing. You're just clearing off. One way I like to think of it is if I were to have a etheric egg around me. Some people actually believe, but just for this, it's like cleaning my house, clearing everything out of that. I want some people will call it psychic garbage. I don't like to use that either necessarily. But seriously, I mean, we have, even when we're not consciously thinking of things, we have all these subconscious pulls. So I go through a little sweep process of just everything off me. Everything has got to be off me. And then when I'm beginning remote viewing, and this isn't always for remote viewing for me, but I'll actually say a little mantra. It's part of my own ritual, and I know a lot of people do it. It could be anything from, but it's part of clarifying that intention. And it could be anything like, it is my intent to bring back the clearest and most accurate information about the target that is required. Something like that.
Yeah.
And recognize that if you're going into it and there is some messiness in your mind, just don't feel bad about writing it down in the right-hand column. I haven't really explained this in this interview yet, but when we're doing remote viewing, we have a process. We have protocols where we'll, write the target number. And for me, I write it a second time where I'm getting more serious about it. And then we draw something. It's a little way of engaging the right and left brain. But we will keep a right-hand column if the mind is guessing things and you can't stop it, you can't help it. Do not feel bad you just write those things down in the right-hand column. Similarly with meditation, because I take meditation very seriously because I believe it's all connected. It is all connected. I will have a regular journal in case I get something that I feel is very important or higher information, whether it's from a part of myself or something else. I will keep a journal that only has that information, but I always have a second pad of paper, similar to remote viewing, that is for my monkey mind because it's got a lot to say.
Yes.
Right? It's got a lot to say. And it's like, sometimes it will come up with some great stuff too, like it's just like, you forgot to do this. And I totally forgot about that. But I in a weird way, I don't try to kill it. I don't try to disallow it. I try to allow it. I actually appease it. It's like, okay, left brain, you got some stuff going on. And I will, in the meditation, I will just stay engaged, just like I would in remote viewing. I stay engaged. I don't get upset about it. And I just will write those, just give it to it. It's like, okay, I'll give you that. So, and I think the more that you just allow it and it becomes a nothing, and you treat your mind like it's a trainee, and you're just teaching it, okay, got it. And back to it. And if it ever does that, I just clear off and go completely clear. Like that's always the goal. Even if I've already got impressions, I get distracted with something, I will go through a process of completely clearing off my mind, some deep breaths, start at zero again. And if it returns those impressions, I know I'm getting something. So I hope I answered your question there.
That's extremely helpful. That really definitely answered it. So what about using it to help
for abductions?
Yeah.
I have never done that. And I'm one of those people that would say, I don't really want to, because I don't think I know there's some people that do, and they like that. But there's lots of us that don't, because we don't know who we're dealing with. And I think even when we think we know we're dealing with, this is my personal opinion, I personally think that we don't. I mean, look at all the different ways these entities are coming in. Or I think a lot of us believe there's, multiple groups coming in. But if they're so beyond us, I mean, and we don't even understand how our own mind works. Imagine if they're way ahead and they can manipulate our minds in any way, whether it's good or bad, I don't want to get involved with that. It's kind of like the Skinwalker thing for me. We always have a joke on our website. Would you remote view Skinwalker or not? Would you go to Skinwalker or not? And I'm definitely in the like, absolutely no way in the world would I go there or remote view it. And I always say, like, please, no, if anyone ever tricked me, and there's lots of remote viewers like that, just because we don't know what we're getting into. Having said that, when people are deep into remote viewing, when you're working for these agencies and stuff, you don't actually, know exactly what you're doing either. And so for some people that brings up a dilemma, and some people end up not wanting to go through the system with remote viewing anymore.
I can understand that.
And that brings
Right?
me to my question. You hit it right on the head, Tracy. While researching stuff for this show, I found some very nefarious stuff about remote viewing.
Oh, okay. I want to hear.
Yeah, and what I found was at the Sanford Research Institute, they took Ingo Swann,
Yeah.
and he was going into a certain machine that should not have been penetrated, but
Yeah.
he was able to penetrate this machine. But
Yeah.
here's the key to it, and this set off a whole new chain of reaction. He was able to manipulate the machine, the instruments on the machine. Now, once that got leaked out, we know that the Russians were actually trying to use remote viewing for assassination. Now, my question to you is, with this nefarious, can remote viewing manipulate instruments, people, and if so, hopefully it will never be, but do you think the government will try to weaponize it?
Oh, and yeah, that's a whole can of worms right there. Okay, so you answered the first question. Yes, we know from that story that was well documented at Stanford that when Ingo Swann did move the needle on this, I can't remember what it was. This crazy
electromagnetic machine.
Right. It was an instrument that was hidden in the basement that nobody knew it was there, but
Right.
it was part of the test, and so that's just one example. And that was in the very beginning, actually. I think that was when they met Ingo Swann, and they're like, okay, this guy's got some abilities. So we know that there are abilities to do these things. Remote influencing, not many people talk about that, but if you ask some of the old Stargate remote viewers about that, I think they're going to say yes. Like, I think Lynn Buchanan talks about remote influencing. And I think, the movie Men Who Stare at Goats was about killing goats. And if you ask them about that, they're going to tell you, yeah, there was some stuff going on like that. So these things are possible.
There was a famous remote viewer that died, and they never really knew the cause of the death. Pat Price.
Oh,
Pat Price was found dead in his room, and there was always the back suspicion that because he was so good, he was actually taken away by the CIA, and he was doing really deep classified work.
He was considered one of the most psychic men in the world. He was a police chief.
Yeah.
And the reason why they became really interested in Pat, other than his incredible ability, was he was, I'm not making judgment anyway here, but he was a Scientologist. And these things that were supposed to be completely in secret, these experiments they were doing, he was reporting everything back to the church that he was doing. So he was sort of breaking protocols, and I'm sure he thought he was doing the right thing. That's the thing. I think a lot of people, when they get involved in these things, they're not doing it for nefarious reasons. They always think they're doing the right thing. Someone has convinced them, that they're being a patriot, or that they're doing this or they're doing that, but that's a good example. Pat Price dies under these mysterious circumstances, the most psychic man in the world. You would think everybody would want to get their hands on. And you ask about that with the people who were involved at SRI, and there's a lot of mystery around his death. And so every remote viewer knows about that, and knows that I think if you're, if you're really, really good, there's going to be a lot of people looking at you. And so it kind of gets into this weird covert world. And I can tell you straight up for myself, this is the thing that I am not interested in. Remote. And I'm just going to just sidetrack just a tiny bit here and say, I am most interested in remote viewing as a personal development tool. I am not interested because when you do anything for intelligence or anyone like that, you are putting all of your trust and faith that they are doing the right thing. And so it's blind faith. And, I don't want to be involved in that. And when you don't know where your remote views are going, I don't want to trust that. So for me, it's become a really, truly a spiritual path. This is about who we are. But I'm happy to go into any of this because it is a crazy, interesting field. And yes, I think, when I tell you about my remote viewing that I gave you some pictures for, it's one thing when you hear the stories, and then it's another when you have an experience yourself that's like, oh my God, I can go into somebody's mind. And then you're like, wow, that's amazing. Oh my God, all humans should know that we have the ability to do this. Why doesn't everybody know that we can do this? And then your mind goes in the next place, which is, what if they weaponized that?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
that would be the most dangerous thing. And I would say, I was actually thinking this should be illegal.
Amanda Curran, our co-producer, had a couple questions. She wanted to know if you have ever been approached, and has your safety ever been a concern for you, being so public with this topic?
Not that I know of. It's probably more been being connected to my husband. But as far as anyone approaching me, what does she mean by that exactly?
Like the government, CIA? Anybody? Do they? Since you're so good at what you do.
Well, here's the thing: you don't always know who you're doing it for. So even when you're doing it for different groups, private groups, this is why I don't do it like this anymore. You don't actually know who you're doing it for. You're trusting it. Yeah. So there was a time where I was doing targets, and they were really not looking good. I knew that I didn't like this, and so I use it for totally different things now. So as far as if I've been approached, I haven't been approached in an overt way. Okay. I'll say it that way.
Interesting.
Talking about not knowing who you're working for all the time, I don't think any of us really know how much our government knows about the ET presence, and I think most of them don't know, but there's no doubt a few do. We've talked so many times on this show about, if they at one point agreed to a genetics program, basically with ET, you have been getting really into abduction research. So we can come back to remote viewing, but I kind of want to steer it that way for a minute so that we really touch on that too, because I know it's a big interest of yours. And can you just talk to us about your thoughts, what your research is pointing out, if you do feel that it is indeed a very big genetic thing?
Well, I'll come back to the genetic part, and I'll just say it was sort of a natural thing, with everything that has happened to me and just wanting to explore our minds and my kind of contact experiences, it was very natural for me to want to start to look at encounters and abductions. So what I've done formally lately is I do qualitative first person abduction interviews, for 16 hours plus, like they just keep going because they never end. And I'm really interested in the psychological imprint that this is leaving. So there's really an in-depth analysis that I'm trying to do in searching for patterns. Maybe people have looked for these patterns before and maybe they haven't, but I'm just doing it based on my own interests, left brain, right brain, all sorts of different things that I want to probe into to look for the patterns of what they're digging for in experiencers or people who know that they've had an experience. And as far as, and I'm loving it, by the way. I haven't done it for a super long time. I mean, obviously, being married to my husband by osmosis, I get a lot of this. And I've been looking into it, looking into cases sort of second, third hand kind of thing. But I'm doing my own first person research now. And I'm learning so much. But as far as genetics, tell me what you guys were getting into. Tell me a little more.
Well, we just, with all the people that have, had mysterious pregnancies that have gone away, men having sperm samples taken and everything. So I just didn't know with the people that you're talking to, obviously don't give us any specific cases or anything, but just if you are finding, a lot of people really feel like that's the message they're getting after their multiple encounters, that they need our genetics, or they're doing something with it.
That.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I feel like there's so many scenarios. I feel like there's so many different groups interested in so many different things. I definitely, there's the idea that they want our genetics for themselves. And then there's the groups that you hear about, such as, this is not from my own research, but this is from the Betty Andreasen case, which Raymond Fowler wrote several books about. Back then, the grays and the encounters, the lengthy encounters she had, they were telling her that they were essentially preserving this version of humanity and archiving us, different phases of us, because we would ourselves become sterile in the future. Which is funny because it's kind of relevant right now with
AI.
a lot of what's going on with that, and some of the studies that are coming out with the vaccines and stuff are kind of scary, and the birth rates declining around the world. You're starting to see this possibly starting, but so you hear all these different things, and maybe all of it is true, but as far as my own personal research, this isn't coming up as much yet. Okay. I do think from one of my own experiences, actually, that I don't talk about as much. I mean, I know there's something going on. I had one of those classic, found myself on a table, with the needle in my navel, and, all these really strange circumstances around it. But it scared me so bad. I woke up in the morning and I phoned my mom and said something happened to me, and this was before I even was involved in the UFO community. This was this kind of thing was happening, and I was trying to deal with it quietly. And then I went to an Yvonne Smith lecture and saw that all these other people were having the exact same thing. And so clearly there's something going on there. They're taking something, they want it for some purpose. But a part of me always reserves this place of, have we even thought of it yet? Those are the two obvious ones. They need it. We need it. But is there I'm always asking myself this, is there something that we haven't thought of? Something else that's going on? And then there's also, I sometimes think of us as, okay, so think about us in 500, 1,000 years, and we're spacefaring. We're visiting several planets. We're checking out new planets. Say we get some crazy disease in our genetics that we can't get rid of. And so our scientists think, okay, well, let's go find a different native life form on another planet, because we have all the means in 1,000 years to do this. And we decide to take some of their genetics to add into our genetics pool. And then we become the aliens. We become the visiting group. We become the visiting group, and we're not trying to hurt them. But if they became aware of what we were doing, it might seem like we were trying to hurt them. But what if it was just a science yeah, like we're just trying to save our species, or we're just trying to maybe we want to drop our genetics on a bunch of different planets and mix it with a bunch of different native species. And so I think of it that way as well. I hope I'm going down the right way that you're
that's
talking
all.
about.
Yeah.
That's great.
Wouldn't it be nice if we find a better way than liposuction? I mean, we can get that from the aliens. If they could take 30 pounds off of me and say, hey, we could do this rather than sticking a needle in you and sucking your fat cells out. I'd
Oh
love
my
that,
God.
wouldn't
Chris, have you seen the movie Elysium?
Yeah.
Okay, so those med beds?
Yeah.
That's
where I'd
waiting
be
for.
dialing it to. I'd be dialing to the Weight Watchers section going, hey, dude. Anyways, listen, I got a question on
Sure.
abduction with you because I've been studying abduction. I'm on the experienced research team, and I've talked to all kinds of abductees. And have you been looking at not only the psychological effects of an abduction, but now even the government is now looking at the physical effects of abduction. People are coming back and they're injured. There's body chemistry has been changed. They're coming back with different things that they can't explain. Dehydration, craving for salt, protein. Now, one of the things we know that they're interested now is how we absorb protein. And that's connected with cattle mutilations and stuff like that, because they're not taking the filet mignons and the sirloins; they're taking the intestines and stuff, and that's where your protein. What I've been researching, that's where they do. So, what do you see with the abduction scenario? What are the physical effects that you're seeing for an abductee? Because not only is it psychologically frightening, but it's physically.
It is. And I'll just be honest, most of my focus is actually psychological, because that's my background is, psychology and medical anthropology, which is basically studying the holistic healing of tribes and, what we're missing here versus there. And so that's sort of the filter that I'm looking at abductions through. I mean, I'm still looking at what the physical effects are, but I can't pretend that I'm really studying what the physical effects are, and I'm not keeping up with that research as much. I mean, you and I were talking about this before with Havana syndrome and all of these things, and that they're finding, the extra connections between the caudate and the putamen, and that is super interesting to me. What's happening in the mind, because we don't understand the mind. So it truly is more of my focus. So I don't feel like I'm really qualified to answer the question.
What do you see as psychological effects then? Where are the most predominant psychological effects that you see with abductees?
Well, one of them, Katie and I were talking about before, is hypervigilance. Right, hypervigilance behaviors. Even when people feel they had something positive happen, they're left with seeds of trauma. And they have usually a part of, not for everybody, but for some, it's almost like a part of them psychologically is still stuck back at that time. And you have all of these strange hypervigilant effects, akin to what we would consider real trauma. It's funny because we don't take it serious. Well, the world doesn't really take this seriously, but we're having the exact same trauma effects. People who are completely phobic and unable to walk into open spaces, who are unable to be in the dark, who are, there's these incredible effects that are changing their lives. Some people will drop out of society. Some people are isolating themselves. There's avoidance of certain stimuli. There's a huge gamut. A lot of people, there's some things that I wouldn't even, that I'm gathering that I don't even know how I'm going to describe them yet. So talking to someone who was taken from the time they were a young child, but they were leaving the house willingly the whole time. They were walking down the stairs, leaving the front door, hearing them calling them in their head, feeling like they were helping them, walking out as a 5-year-old, walking across the street, 3 a.m, walking behind other neighbors' houses into an open field and to go and meet these beings in the middle of this scary nowhere, night after night after night after night. But they, and now they're 70 years old, and they have processed this their whole lives as helping these people, because they presented it for this particular person as human entities, like they seemed like a couple, a man and a woman. But it wasn't until we really pulled this apart and realized those people never aged, and figured out how long this was going on for him, because we were asking about the different, how tall was he on them, when it started versus when it ended. And, I'm interested in how he was able to psychologically process this at the time, with his siblings and with his parents, and different reactions, and then how what it was like in the middle of his life, and now what it's like now. And the funny thing is, most of these people have never thought of it. Like they've never been asked these questions. They've never thought of it. So we're going through a process of the first time they're asked, it's kind of like what we were talking about before, when they've never been asked something, it surprises them, and something they didn't even expect comes out. And then they are discovering these effects within themselves. Oh yeah. Like, I do have an avoidance of that. I do have this thing where I don't trust men over this size of height. I do have, so I'm more right now digging. Right. So I wouldn't say I have a lot of conclusions yet, but the journey down and tracking these new ways that they're looking back on their life. Like they thought it was normal. They had compartmentalized it, right? This happens we learn this about a lot of abductees and a lot of people who have encounters. You have to compartmentalize it, but you've chosen to do that. But for a lot of people, they haven't even chosen. They didn't even realize all of this until someone's sitting in there and asking them all these questions and picking through their life with them. So I think probably a year from now, I'm going to have hopefully some interesting results, at least right now I have, 12 people, and it's a lot of digging.
Yeah.
But,
Tracy.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, finish.
No,
up.
I was done.
Okay.
I was done.
So a lot of PTSD symptoms,
Yes,
obviously,
yes,
for abductees
yeah.
and contactees. I've been really interested in something, and I want to know if you have found this in your research in the contactees and abductees you've worked with, but this piece of trauma and disassociation that opens up people to have contact with other beings, whether they're extraterrestrial or what. There seems to be, at least in my experience, and maybe Chris as well, and Katie, that a lot of these abducted contacts do have trauma in their past. Have you found that to be true?
You mean unrelated trauma?
Yeah, unrelated trauma before this disassociation. So let's say you go through trauma in the different forms, you disassociate, and that connects you into contact with the beings. That's like a theory I have.
Okay. I have heard something like this before. The ability to disassociate is what they're taking advantage of. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
What you're theorizing. Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's a good theory. Because some people believe that with when we get into metaphysical realms of things, that there's a part of the psyche that is then vulnerable, right? When it's split off like that, and it's it can be, whatever they're doing can be hidden from the rest of the psyche. And I think that we know from psychological experiments associated with Montauk, and at least that I've heard of, where they use these things as techniques. And I think even for things like Manchurian candidates, now I'm getting a little out of my own depths here saying this, but they will create a trauma to have a split in the personality, to be able to manipulate that part of the personality, and that part does not remember when it's given certain instructions. So you could do a hypnosis on that part, that section of the mind, and the rest of the mind won't recognize it. So I think that's a good theory and a very likely theory that that is something that is probably happening. And I will have to go back over mine and have a look, because you know what, that makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
It
so
makes sense.
interesting. I've never thought of what you just said, that perhaps these ETs or beings are creating trauma in humans' lives.
Well, let's hope not.
I hope not, but I've never thought of that before. So that's
Or maybe
Oh,
just people with trauma are good
yeah.
candidates for
Maybe.
them to work with, because our brains know how to compartmentalize. That's how
Compartmentalize.
we handled trauma, when we were younger. I mean, Angelia Shear used to talk a lot about trauma, just because she said, where do you go when you, whether it's OBE or just sort of a mental shift to handle, trauma going on in your human life, you might be stepping into their realm.
Right.
And you might be like a honky tonk light flashing for them, like, whoa, this one's good. They know how to pop out whenever we need them to, so there could be something.
Right.
And what could attach, when you're hanging out in their club, that you don't even know that you're bringing back. So, I mean, there could be this, it's almost like a muscle that could be getting exercised, but it's triggered from human trauma, perhaps.
Perhaps. I hadn't really thought of it quite that way before. I kind of was always thinking of it as like people who really practice going out of a beta brainwave state, which is the conscious brainwave state. So in meditation, or it could be in trauma, it could be in other ways, when they get super relaxed and they're leaving that brainwave state, and they're slowing down into an alpha state, that this is where they will perhaps run into other dimensions, or they will, or that psychic light shines. It's like, oh, we filtered into their world just by slowing down the oscillations of our brainwave. So this is how I was always thinking of it. But now I'm going to be looking for what you guys are saying to see if that could be a part of the key, because the people that I've interviewed, they haven't had, well, at least they haven't told me about a really, serious hardcore trauma that has happened to them. And it doesn't mean it's not there, because sometimes that sharing doesn't come out until the later sessions.
Well, and I think a lot of
Yeah.
contactees don't even make the connection.
Yeah,
And I think that's what we're always talking about on this show is, could there be a connection? So it's something that might not come up unless you ask. But while we're on this whole brain, what our brain does, one of the cool things about Monroe is the hemisync technology, how forcing right and left brain to work as one. Have you found a connection yet, or do you suspect any connection between people that are more right-brained having more likely to have contact?
Yeah. I used to really feel that there was something to that, and I still do. But I just want to skip over that a little bit. And where I am now is, I wonder if these I definitely subscribe for my own reasons. I think we are part of a big experiment by multiple groups. They have the upper hand, that's for sure. And I think that one possibility is that people who are a little more on the right brain spectrum, I'm definitely one of those people, their minds work a little bit more abstract. Speaking for myself, we're a little less organized in general. We tend to be a little more artsy. Not always, but I sometimes wonder if it might look like it's people who are more artsy, intuitive, right-brained, who are the abductees and having encounters. But could it also be that people who are a little more right-brained might have, because of the abstract ways we think, nonlinear, could we possibly have more bleed through in the way our memories are stored and processed? So, I mean, I say this because I used to work as a video game artist. And it became very clear to me, because basically you've got I mean, I know saying right brain and left brain is oversimplifying for anyone who watches this and says, we don't listen to that anymore, but there's something to right lateralized and left lateralized thinking. Right brain is visual spatial, whereas people who are really strong in the left are very analytical and sometimes more organized. And obviously there's a continuum in the middle of this whole thing. But when I worked at the video game company, they would hire, really strong outlier right brains who are, we're disorganized people, but we're art, we're very strong in our art. And then they would hire people who are way off on the left spectrum, our programmers, the engineers, and they had their way of working was so methodical and linear. And then the managers would be people who had nice balance, and they would manage us. But I'm getting like, there's a point to this. When I was one of the artists, and you would pair us up with our programmers, and you could see so clearly how our brains process differently. They prefer to do everything in words and email. And for all the artists, they actually studied us over this to see how we could become more efficient. The artists would drown in emails because their minds are always trying to process things in pictures. Yeah. And so these two didn't quite, they were an amazing, to make a video game, you need the art, and then you need all the programming to make the art work. So you need it together. But they had to find out a way to make these two ultra efficient. But this is one of the reasons why the right brain, left brain thing became such a big thing to me, because I could really see our differences and the strengths and the weaknesses of both. Mm-hmm. And I could see the way they processed memories and the way their analytical thinking worked compared to us. And so this is one of the things that led me to wondering, do people with really strong right brain abilities process memories and different parts of the brain and store those memories somewhere else? So is it more likely that those memories of encounters and abductions could bleed and leak out? Like they're not, I feel like an alien species or non-human entities or even advanced humans even could manipulate a mind that was more linear and organized, as opposed to one that looks like a messy room inside. It's like, I tried to control her, but she knows where everything is in the messy room, and I can't control it. Again, another weird analogy I've never used before, but it's kind of true. So this is what I wonder sometimes: are they more interested in these people, or are these people the ones who are remembering? I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tracey, that brings me to an interesting question about the Monroe Institute with that, because there's my understanding in the Monroe Institute, Robert Monroe was being able to develop different levels of consciousness, and he was able to go to these different levels. One of the things that he said was frightening, that he was able to interact with ETs at these different levels. He actually said, hey, I went to a certain level and there were draconians. How does this consciousness level work? Because I'm not quite sure I get it. Can you explain it?
Well, I don't know that any of us know for sure. So I don't want to pretend that I know that answer. But what I can say about Robert Monroe here is that, he was an audio engineer who had spontaneous out of bodies to such an extent, and this is before anybody knew what it was, to such an extent that he thought he was dying, and he was a millionaire at the time, but he thought he was dying, and he had one of his friends who was a psychiatrist and one who was a doctor check him out and be like, am I dying? And they both said, no, you're okay. So once he knew he was okay, he basically spent years and years studying himself and then other people and trying to sort of deconstruct the brain waves and so they would study the brainwaves when someone was going out of body, for example, and then they tried to sort of reverse engineer those. That's what hemisync really is. It's the reverse engineering of this. But so Robert went on this huge journey of trying, because he would have so many out of body experiences, he would try to map his experience of these different levels. And so he came up with, kind of this system that he observed. And he would go back. It wasn't like it happened one or two times for him. He observed these over and over and over. And at the Monroe Institute, we call these different focus levels. But he also was known for saying that you can do or experience anything from focus 10, like the lowest level. He believed everything was accessible there. However, on this roadmap he made, he talks about, at focus 15, focus 12, 15, 20, that you were more easily able to access other beings in this realm, or this particular other realm, where they more sometimes sound like they're these things are hard to put words around. Because I don't want to use just the typical consciousness level terms. Like, I want to find other terms that are more accurate and more real. Like, if humanity was able to, through our thinking and through our lifetimes and through generations, it's almost like we have constructed an etheric world. Like, perhaps there isn't an etheric world that exists, and it has all these unique things of its own and all these different levels, and perhaps masters are a part of that, and guides are somewhere along there. But he also believed that we have sort of, out of our own psyche, built our own structure as well. That, so for example, part of that might be a religious framework structure, might be on one level, where when people have out of bodies, some people will go straight to that level because that's where they've been, that's the level they've been sort of etherically creating their whole life, right? And some people may have been meditating their whole life, and they, unbeknownst to them, are creating this other level, and it's coming in clearer and clearer. And it's almost like it becomes not a thought form, but a form of its own. So there's kind of, there's going to be people who are like, oh, that's not accurate. But I mean, I'm going off of years ago studying this.
I just want to piggyback on that question, that answer and everything.
It's a tough one to answer.
Well, I told you you've done an amazing
I love
job.
it.
Let me tell you something.
I'll do my best to answer.
No, you're
whatever
doing
I can.
great. You're doing awesome. But I want to know about your most amazing remote viewing that you did. I want one of your cases that astonishes me.
Thank you. And I always say this, but I really mean this. I tell these stories not as bragging what I can do. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. I tell these stories because I almost feel like it's a duty that people should know what we're able to do, because these two particular stories, I'll tell one really quick and then the other, but they happened when I wasn't really trained. I wasn't that trained. And one of them was a future remote view. A future remote view means you're going to remote view something one day, but they're not even going to choose the person who chooses the hidden target for 7 more days, for example. So what does that say about consciousness? So that was something I experimented with. And just to cut this short so I can get to the other story, I ended up getting a hit on that. And when that happened, I knew there is so much more than what they're telling us. And I need to look into this. Like, what is this? What is this whole other world that we're not being told about? That we are so that just blew the whole space and time paradigm. I know, and we know we're all connected. So, but the other one, which I've given you some pictures for. So I'll just take you through this one really quickly. typically would give you something in an envelope, right? And so this is from my lecture slides. Just to show you what it looks like. So you might get an envelope and you'll get a target number, and just so people know, that number on it, a long time ago, that used to be a coordinate for coordinate remote viewing. But now it could be an X. It could say ABC. It doesn't matter. It's all about that focus of intention. And that's really what that is. You're focusing your intention on that. You're doing your mantra. You're doing your quieting. You're going into your meditative state. You are clearing off your mind. And then, you are just letting these things emerge. And this one I share with you because this is one of those deeper, experiential, more lucid type of experiences. It's not like I saw everything perfectly, but this is where when you start to feel a target, all of your senses start to overlap and some crazy stuff happens. So I'm going to describe this and then I'll tell you when we should advance it. But so I'm cooling down. I keep using that term, but it's just going into my little meditative state, preparing, relaxing, and then boom, I start smelling things. I start feeling water droplets, like mist on my face. I start smelling this water that smells, it was so specific. I knew that it was water that was enclosed somewhere, and it was outdoors. It smelled gross. It smelled, I could smell, I didn't even know I would be able to smell it, but the smell of stone that had fresh water in it and moss, and that it was enclosed and there were ducks there. I could smell duck poop. I mean, this is the thing. When you lock in, you start to really have an experiential experience. I'm feeling the water. Then I can feel that this is a large body of water. I can feel that there are buildings all around me, not houses, tall buildings. So I can feel the bustle of people around me, but I can feel the stillness in the middle. And I know there's marine life. And then I start to see shapes. And this is where I couldn't exactly see it, but you just know it sometimes. And I could see this turtle shape, and I could see this shape going up and over. And I started to know, that I'm in a water park. I am in a water park. I know there's animals around me. I'm feeling all these things. And then at the very end of this, and this is the most important part of the story, when this is almost over, I see this perfect eyeball looking back at me in a reflective surface. And I can see the makeup, and I can see it's a woman, because one of the objectives was to figure out where you are in the world, where this person is in the world. I should have introduced this, sorry. Where this person is in the world, and whether it's a woman or a man. And so at the end, I had seen this. Now, when they reveal this remote view, which you can put that slide up if you want, I come to find out that not that one, maybe. Well, that's good. Sorry. That's right. You can see that here are a lot of the shapes. It was a city surrounding this body of water. And in this very center of it, this is Lake Eola in Orlando, Florida, there's this turtle shape and this fountain where all of the mist was coming off. And the thing is, when you engage at this level, you don't actually need to see the reveal. I mean, you do to learn about yourself, but I was there, I was not surprised, but I was in a classroom, and when they brought in the woman who was there, this is in a city far, far away from us. We had no idea where we were remote viewing. She described the area, but she never said anything about anything that she was looking at. Weird chain of events. I'll tell this as fast as I can, because I know we're wrapping up here. I end up, as a Canadian, moving to that city. Weird synchronicity.
Oh, wow.
I end up meeting the woman whose name is Patty Cyrus. She's an amazing remote viewer, it turns out. Meeting her, and I was so excited not because I was like, oh, look what I did. I was so excited because I said, I have so many more questions, because I was embarrassed in the class. I wasn't going to go, hey, I saw someone in the mirror, and, I wasn't that confident. But I got to go out for lunch with her, and I showed her the remote view, and I asked her, I'm like, I need to know. I saw this your eye in a reflective surface. And she said, oh my God, I opened up my purse and pulled out a compact and looked at myself in the eye in case it helped anybody.
Oh, wow.
So if we just think about that for a second, I had engaged on what she was looking at in her environment. I had felt what she was feeling with her sense organs. And not only that, I had smelled what she smelled. I saw what she saw. But the craziest part that has crazy implications and brings us back to Chris, what you said about weaponizing this, I was looking through her eyes. I was hijacking her senses and her eyesight. And that eye was the clearest vision of anything I have ever seen. It was so clear. And so the implications of this for humanity are huge. So I always say, I just want people to know about this, that this is possible, because it tells us so much about who we really are and things that we, we still need to learn. So,
right. Well, Tracey, we only have a minute left. I wanted to mention really quick. I know this time flew by, and I know Chris, Katie, and I still have so many more questions. We would love to have you back on sometime if you would come back on. But can you talk about your website and your YouTube channel really fast?
Oh, sure.
Mention it so we could put it up there.
Yeah, sure. So Richard Dolan is my husband, and we do everything together. Everything that we work on is on richarddolanmembers.com. Now, it's called that. However, it is also a free website. There's lots of free content. There's a tab that says free content, but it is also the majority of what we do is part of the membership. It's how we pay for our time to research. So, and we also have our YouTube channel, where sometimes we will take clips of those things and put them out for free on the YouTube channel. But Richard's always still putting a lot of content up there. But
that's great.
Hey, you guys, this has been really great. You guys have been really fun. Sorry, I give long answers to everything.
No, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Katie Cook. Thank you, Krista Perno. Thank you to all our listeners out there. We will see you next week. And thank you to Bill Skywatcher, our producer, and Amanda Curran. Thank you, our co-producer. You all have a lovely rest of your week, and bye.
Thank you, guys. It was wonderful.
Bye, Tracey.
Bye.